What happens when police officers who are supposed to enforce the law are actually ignorant when it comes to the law? Does the Supreme Court believe that they should be protected? Well, it turns out that a robust 8-1 majority in the Supreme Court has recently ruled that if a cop is ignorant on the law, it's okay. Now, this case centers on Heien versus North Carolina, and it's a case where a police officer in North Carolina pulled over someone for looking suspicious. Now, cops can't just pull someone over for looking suspicious. They have to state a specific reason why they're pulling an individual over. And Heien was pulled over because of a broken brake light, okay? And so what's interesting about this case is Heien then got arrested for cocaine trafficking, okay? But this case went to the Supreme Court because it turns out that under North Carolina law, all you need to have is one working brake light. A cop can't pull you over for having one of them broken. So let me give you the details on that. The North Carolina State Court of Appeals had concluded that because state law says a car must have a stop lamp, singular, it's not illegal to operate a car that's down to one functioning brake light. But the Supreme Court decided that even though the car was legal, the arresting officer's mistaken understanding of the law was reasonable.
Now, get a load of the implication of that decision. So if you mistakenly believe that something you did is legal, but it turns out it is not legal, what's the famous phrase they always say? Ignorance of the law is no excuse, right? Mm-hmm. But now, because of the Supreme Court decision, ignorance of the law is an excuse, but only for the cops.
Only for the cops. And think about the precedent this sets, right? That means that cops can pull you over for nothing, right? You're doing everything right, you're not breaking the law, but you happen to look suspicious, right? Cop decides to pull you over and state something that's not actually illegal. Well, yeah, I was just ignorant of the law. That's reasonable, right? I can't know everything, even though my job is to enforce the law.
I mean, we just did a story about a kid that was pulled over in Florida because he had a Massachusetts license plate. That was one of the things he was charged with. He's from Massachusetts, but the cop can say, oh, I thought that if you have Massachusetts license plates in Florida, I could just pull you over. Golly gee, did I get that wrong? Right? Now, look, part of the reason that the court goes in this direction is because you have cops and prosecutors, et cetera, that come in and say, hey, listen, man, I pulled a guy over for a broken lamp, and it turns out the law is vague on that, and I found a body in his car, which they didn't in this case, but I could have found a body in his car. What do you want me to do, let him go, right? Mm-hmm. And he's going to get away with it. You don't want that. So just give me room for error here. But the problem is we keep giving them more and more room for error. We get no room for error. They get all the room for error. And then these judges, they don't live in the real world. And let me explain that, right? So all the people they know don't get harassed by the cops, right? All the people they know are people who just are generally, the cops do look out for them. Mm-hmm. They're the powerful. These guys are Supreme Court justices, right? And these women as well. And not just that, but the circles they run in, there's a lot of lawyers, there's a lot of prosecutors, there's a lot of police officers, so they can't help but be inundated with that perspective and that point of view.
Right.
But what they don't see is the point of view of the average citizen out there getting harassed by the cops, and the cop going, oh, I guess I was wrong about that. Who cares, right?
But how, insulated do you have to be to not understand that a broken taillight or a broken brake light offense is a common thing, right? So cops usually pull you over for those types of things. So I would assume that a cop would know what the laws are when it comes to functioning elements of your vehicle.
No, I think that they don't know. I don't think Sam Alito or most of the other justices on there, remember it was 8-1, only Sonia Sotomayor voted against it, have ever gotten pulled over for a brake light being out when it wasn't actually out. I don't think they've ever experienced that. And if you told them that, they might even be a little like, really? Because they just haven't lived it. They don't know it.
I just don't, I don't know. I haven't lived their life, which is why I don't understand their perspective. Can I just state one of their, how they reasoned in this case? They said to be reasonable, which is what they expect of the cops, is not to be perfect. And so the Fourth Amendment allows for some mistakes on the part of government officials. I get it, but we're talking about a brake light. That is one of the most common things that cops have to deal with when it comes to cars and moving violations and things like that.
But they don't give the same benefit of the doubt to the citizens.
No, they don't.
They don't say, hey, you broke that law, but I mean, you were being fairly reasonable when you broke it. When has that defense ever worked in court?
Never. In fact, let me give you a specific example. This is anecdotal evidence of something I went through. I once got a U-turn ticket, even though I made a U-turn in an intersection that did not have a sign saying no U-turns. Usually there's a sign that says no U-turns, right? Made the U-turn, didn't think it would be a big deal. All of a sudden I get pulled over. You know what the cop tells me? You got pulled over because you made a U-turn in a business district. How am I supposed to know I'm not allowed to make a U-turn in a business district, right? So I explained that to him. Do you think he cared? Hell no. I got that ticket, paid hundreds of dollars, went to traffic school, went through a headache over that.
You should have just gone all the way to the Supreme Court and said, I made a reasonable mistake. I'm sure since you give the cops the benefit of the doubt, you'll give me the benefit of the doubt too, right?
Of course.
All right. Yeah. At least there was one reasonable justice. Sonia Sotomayor said, permitting mistakes of law to justify seizures has the perverse effect of preventing or delaying the clarification of the law. Under such an approach, courts need not interpret statutory language, but can instead simply decide whether an officer's interpretation was reasonable. So there's another layer to it, where she says you don't even have to screw up the fixed up law. You don't have to fix the screwed up laws. You can just be like, let the cops handle it in a reasonable way, and we won't hold them to it anyway.
Yep.